The stars shimmered like scattered diamonds across the vast expanse of space, their light a comforting presence for Captain Leo Hart as his ship descended onto an alien planet. It had been 20 years since he last set foot here, a youthful adventure that felt more like a dream than reality now. He remembered it vividly. The lush green landscapes dotted with bioluminescent flowers, the towering crystalline structures that seemed to hum with energy, and most importantly, her, the queen of this world, whose beauty was so otherworldly it almost defied description. Her name was Lyra, though back then she hadn't yet ascended to the throne. She was just a curious young princess who stumbled upon Leo during one of his reckless exploration missions. They were both barely out of adolescence, him in his late teens, and her perhaps slightly older by human standards but still young enough to be filled with wonder about the universe beyond her borders. Their meeting had been accidental. He crashed his small shuttle into one of the crystal towers while trying to evade a meteor storm. When he emerged from the wreckage, dazed and covered in dirt, she stood before him, eyes wide with curiosity and amusement. Leo chuckled at the memory as his ship touched down softly on the landing pad outside her palace. Back then, he joked around a lot, partly because he didn't know how else to deal with the surreal situation and partly because Lyra's presence made him feel oddly nervous despite her playful demeanor. One evening, under the glow of 3 moons, they sat together near the edge of a shimmering lake. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of blooming flora. Lyra leaned closer, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders like liquid moonlight, and asked him what humans did when they found someone special. "Well," Leo had said with a smirk, "we usually promise to marry them when we grow up." It was meant to be light-hearted banter, nothing serious. But Lyra's expression changed instantly. Her violet eyes sparkled with determination as she declared, "Then you must keep your promise." He laughed it off, thinking she was joking too. After all, they came from different worlds. Literally, how could such a thing ever happen? Yet deep down, there was something magnetic about her, something that lingered long after he left her planet. Now, decades later, fate, or maybe Lyra herself, had called him back. And judging by the grand reception awaiting him outside the ship, she hadn't forgotten his flippant remark. As the hatch opened, Leo stepped out into the bright sunlight of Lyra's planet. A guard approached him, bowing respectfully before guiding him toward the palace gates. The architecture was even more breathtaking up close. Enormous spires stretched toward the sky, each surface etched with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly with light. Everything seemed alive here, pulsating with energy and purpose. When he finally entered the throne room, his breath caught in his throat. There she was, Queen Lyra, seated regally atop a throne carved from translucent crystal. She looked every bit the sovereign ruler, adorned in flowing robes that shimmered like stardust. Her gaze locked onto him immediately, and a small smile tugged at her lips. "You kept me waiting," she said simply, her voice melodic yet commanding. Leo cleared his throat, suddenly feeling much younger than his 40-something years. Yeah, sorry about that. Life got busy." "Busy?" She raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "You promised me marriage, Leo Hart. Do you remember?" Oh boy, she wasn't kidding. His heart raced as he realized she truly intended to hold him accountable for that offhand comment. Before he could respond, she rose gracefully from her throne and walked toward him, her movements fluid and mesmerizing. Up close, she was even more stunning than he remembered, if that was possible. Her skin glowed faintly, and her eyes held galaxies within them. "I've waited 20 years, she continued, stopping mere inches away from him. "And I do not take promises lightly." Leo scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. "Look, Lyra, I was just joking back then. You can't honestly expect me to." "Why not?" she interrupted, tilting her head slightly. "You are here now. We have time to correct this oversight." Before he could protest further, she clapped her hands once, and servants appeared, ushering him toward a guest chamber where he would stay until she decided what to do next. As much as he wanted to argue, there was no denying the authority in her tone. This wasn't going to be easy. Over the next few days, Leo tried to reason with Lyra, explaining that Earth customs weren't quite the same as those on her planet. But she dismissed his arguments with a wave of her hand, insisting that promises transcended cultural differences. Frustrated but also intrigued, Leo began exploring the palace grounds, hoping to find some clue or loophole that might help him escape this bizarre predicament. One afternoon, while wandering through a garden filled with glowing plants, he stumbled upon a group of children playing hide and seek among the trees. To his surprise, one of them ran straight up to him, tugging on his sleeve. "Are you the human prince?" the child asked excitedly. "What? No." Leo laughed nervously. "I'm just visiting." "But Queen Lyra says you're going to marry her." Another child chimed in, giggling. Great. Even the kids knew about this mess. Just when he thought things couldn't get any weirder, a loud roar echoed through the air, followed by screams. The ground trembled beneath his feet as chaos erupted around him. Instinctively, Leo scooped up the nearest child and ran toward safety. When he reached the palace courtyard, he saw guards rushing toward the source of the commotion. Lyra appeared moments later, her usual calm demeanor replaced by steely resolve. Without hesitation, she grabbed a spear-like weapon from a nearby soldier and motioned for Leo to follow her. "What's happening?" he shouted over the noise. "A rogue creature has breached our defenses," she replied tersely. "Stay close if you want to live." Together, they raced toward the outskirts of the city, where smoke billowed into the sky. The creature turned out to be massive, a hulking beast with scales that shimmered like molten gold and claws sharp enough to slice through steel. It roared again, swiping at anything that moved. Lyra charged forward fearlessly, her weapon gleaming as she struck at the monster. Leo watched in awe, momentarily forgetting his own fears. Then, realizing she needed backup, he grabbed a fallen branch and joined the fray. Between the two of them, and with some assistance from the guards, they managed to subdue the beast, forcing it to retreat into the wilderness. Breathing heavily, Lyra turned to Leo, her face flushed with adrenaline. For the first time since arriving, he saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "You fought well," she admitted grudgingly. "Not bad for a human." "Thanks," he replied, equally out of breath. "But don't think this means I'm agreeing to marry you." She smirked. "We'll see." Despite himself, Leo couldn't help but admire her strength and determination. Over the following weeks, they spent more time together, learning about each other's worlds and sharing stories of their lives apart. Slowly but surely, he began to understand why she had taken his childhood promise so seriously. It wasn't just about marriage. It was about trust, honor, and the bond they had formed all those years ago. Yet doubts still lingered in his mind. Could he really abandon everything he knew for a life here? And more importantly, did he even want to? One evening, as they stood atop the highest tower watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Lyra turned to him with a soft expression. "Tell me, Leo," she said quietly, "do you regret coming back?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "No," he admitted finally, "but I'm scared. Scared of losing myself, of disappointing you." She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle. "Fear is natural, but sometimes we must embrace it to find our true path." Just as he opened his mouth to reply, alarms blared throughout the palace. Soldiers rushed past them, shouting orders. Another crisis loomed on the horizon, one far greater than a rampaging beast. And this time, it threatened not only Lyra's kingdom but the entire galaxy. Without waiting for instructions, Leo followed Lyra as she sprinted toward the command center. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. Their fates were intertwined now, whether he liked it or not. The command center buzzed with frantic activity as holographic screens flickered above consoles, displaying ominous images of an approaching fleet. The enemy ships were unlike anything Leo had ever seen. Dark, jagged vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved in perfect formation, exuding a cold precision that sent shivers down his spine. "What's going on?" Leo asked, his voice barely audible over the commotion. Lyra stood tall, her regal composure unshaken despite the looming threat. "It's the Krylos," she explained grimly, "a ruthless faction from a neighboring system. They've been trying to seize control of our planet for decades." Leo frowned. "Why now? Why after all this time?" "They seek something we guard. A power source buried deep within our planet's core. It sustains us, but if they take it, they'll use it to conquer other worlds." Her words hung heavy in the air. Leo felt a surge of protectiveness. Not just for Lyra, but for the vibrant world he'd come to admire. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was his too. "Tell me what I can do," he said firmly. Lyra glanced at him, surprise flickering across her features before being replaced by determination. "You'll need training. Our weapons are advanced and you're used to simpler tools." She gestured toward a nearby soldier. "Prepare him. For the next several hours, Leo endured intense drills under the watchful eyes of Lyra's elite guards. The exercises pushed him to his limits, testing both his physical endurance and mental agility. At first, he struggled, fumbling with unfamiliar technology and misjudging the weight of energy-based weapons. But slowly, muscle memory kicked in, and he began to adapt. Throughout the process, Lyra remained close, observing silently but offering guidance when needed. Her presence gave him strength, even when frustration threatened to overwhelm him. During one particularly grueling session, she approached him as he leaned against a wall, catching his breath. "You're doing well," she said softly, handing him a flask of cool water. He chuckled weakly. "Yeah, right. Half the time I feel like I'm holding everyone back." She shook her head. "You underestimate yourself. You've proven your courage already. That's more valuable than skill alone." Her words struck a chord, reminding him why he'd chosen to stay despite his fears. He nodded, resolve hardening within him. "All right, let's keep going." As the days passed, their bond deepened. Training sessions turned into shared meals, where they exchanged stories about their lives. Lyra spoke of the pressures of leadership, the loneliness of carrying the weight of an entire civilization on her shoulders. In turn, Leo opened up about his own struggles, his wanderlust, his fear of commitment, and the void left by relationships that never quite worked out. One night, beneath the glow of the triple moons, they found themselves sitting by the same lake where they'd first met. The water shimmered with reflected starlight, casting an ethereal glow over the scene. "I never thought I'd see you again," Lyra admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "When you left 20 years ago, part of me wondered if I'd imagined our connection." Leo looked at her, struck by the honesty in her gaze. "I didn't imagine it," he replied. "And I won't lie, I came here thinking I could talk my way out of this whole marriage thing. But spending time with you again, seeing how strong you are, how much you care for your people." He paused, searching for the right words. "It makes me want to be better, to deserve someone like you." Lyra smiled faintly, though sadness lingered in her expression. "Deserving has nothing to do with it. Love isn't earned, it simply is." Her words resonated deeply, stirring emotions he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge until now. For the first time, he entertained the possibility that maybe, just maybe, staying here wouldn't be such a bad idea. Their quiet moment was interrupted by the distant hum of engines. Both sprang to their feet, scanning the horizon. A single Krylon scout ship descended rapidly, its shadow blotting out the moonlight. Moments later, a squad of armored soldiers materialized, surrounding them. "Queen Lyra," their leader growled, his voice distorted by his helmet. "Surrender the core or face annihilation." Lyra stepped forward, her posture unwavering. "You'll have to kill me first." Leo instinctively positioned himself beside her, gripping the weapon he'd trained so hard to master. Adrenaline coursed through his veins as he locked eyes with the nearest enemy soldier. "Don't be stupid, Leo," Lyra whispered sharply. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted, his tone resolute. "We're in this together." The ensuing battle was chaos. Energy blasts lit up the night sky as Leo and Lyra fought side by side, their movements synchronized as if they'd trained together for years. Despite the odds, they held their ground, driving the invaders back toward their ship. Just as victory seemed within reach, however, reinforcements arrived, overwhelming them with sheer numbers. Cornered and outnumbered, Lyra made a desperate decision. "Follow me," she shouted, grabbing Leo's hand and sprinting toward a narrow passageway hidden among the rocks. They ducked inside, narrowly avoiding a barrage of laser fire. The tunnel led to an underground chamber bathed in soft blue light. At its center pulsed the planet's core, a radiant orb of pure energy encased in crystalline formations. "This is what they're after," Lyra said urgently. "If they destroy it, everything will collapse." Leo's mind raced. "Is there any way to stop them?" "There's a failsafe," she replied, pressing a hand against the core. "But activating it requires a sacrifice. Someone must remain here to stabilize the energy field while the others escape." "No," Leo said instantly. "There's got to be another way." "There isn't," she countered, her voice steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. "This is my duty. My people depend on me." Before he could argue further, alarms blared overhead. The Krylos had breached the outer defenses and were closing in fast. "Go," Lyra commanded, shoving him toward the exit. "Find the council. Tell them to evacuate the city. I'm not leaving you, he insisted, grabbing her arm. Not this time. Her expression softened, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to lean into him. Then help me buy some time. Together, they devised a plan. Using the core's energy, they created a diversionary explosion that would temporarily disable the invading forces. As the countdown began, Leo refused to leave Lyra's side, determined to ensure she escaped safely. But fate had other plans. When the blast detonated, sending shockwaves rippling through the chamber, Leo shielded Lyra with his body. The impact knocked them both off their feet, and darkness enveloped them. When Leo regained consciousness, he found himself lying on the floor, pain radiating through his torso. Through blurred vision, he saw Lyra kneeling beside him, her hands trembling as she pressed them against his wound. "You idiot!" she murmured, her voice breaking. "Why did you do that?" He managed a weak smile. "Couldn't let my queen die before our wedding day." Despite the gravity of the situation, Lyra let out a choked laugh, tears streaming down her face. "You're impossible." Summoning every ounce of strength, Leo reached up to brush a stray strand of hair from her cheek. "Promise me something." "What?" she whispered, leaning closer. "That no matter what happens next, you won't give up. Not on your people, and not on us." Her lips parted as if to protest, but instead, she nodded, sealing the promise with a hug. Above them, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Whatever awaited them beyond this moment, one thing was certain. Their bond had transcended doubt, fear, and even the vastness of space itself. Together, they would face whatever came next. As equals, as partners, and perhaps someday as something more. The silence that followed the explosion was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the core's energy. Lyra cradled Leo's head in her lap, her hands trembling as she pressed them against his wound to staunch the bleeding. His breathing was shallow, and his face pale, but there was still a flicker of life in his eyes, a stubborn determination that refused to fade. "You're not allowed to leave me," she whispered fiercely, her voice cracking under the weight of emotion. "Not now. Not after everything." Leo forced a weak smile, wincing at the effort. "I'm not going anywhere yet," he rasped. "You'll have to work harder than that to get rid of me." Her lips twitched into the faintest hint of a smile, though tears continued to stream down her cheeks. She reached for the communicator strapped to her belt, her fingers fumbling as she tried to call for help. Static greeted her attempts. The Krylos must have disrupted their communications. Panic bubbled beneath her calm exterior, but she pushed it down. Losing control wouldn't save him. "We need to move you," she said firmly, more to herself than to him. "There's a medical bay nearby. If I can." "Lyra," Leo interrupted softly, his voice barely audible. "Don't waste time on me. The core, your people. They can wait," she snapped, her violet eyes blazing with defiance. "You won't die here. Do you understand? You promised." He chuckled weakly, then winced again. "Technically, you made me promise. That counts, right?" She rolled her eyes despite the gravity of the situation. "You're impossible." Summoning every ounce of strength, Lyra carefully hoisted Leo onto her shoulder, supporting his weight as best she could. Her muscles screamed in protest, but adrenaline fueled her movements. Step by agonizing step, she navigated the dimly lit tunnels, guided by the faint glow of bioluminescent moss clinging to the walls. As they moved, memories flooded her mind, memories of their first meeting, the playful banter, the way he joked about marrying her when he grew up. At the time, she hadn't understood the concept fully. Marriage wasn't a tradition among her people, but the idea had intrigued her. It represented permanence, commitment, a bond unbreakable even by distance or time. And now, here he was, fighting alongside her, risking his life for hers without hesitation. She tightened her grip on him, her resolve hardening. She wouldn't let him go, not like this. Meanwhile, above ground, the battle raged on. The Krylos forces had regrouped, their numbers bolstered by reinforcements. They advanced relentlessly, their dark ships blotting out the stars as they descended upon the capital city. Chaos erupted in the streets as civilians fled for safety, guided by Lyra's loyal guards toward evacuation routes. Among the chaos stood Commander Vela, one of Lyra's most trusted advisors. She barked orders into her communicator, coordinating defensive efforts while scanning the battlefield for any sign of her queen. When no response came from Lyra's channel, worry gnawed at her gut. "She has to be alive," Vela muttered under her breath, firing a plasma bolt at an advancing enemy drone. She has to be. Suddenly, a transmission crackled through her earpiece. A distorted voice spoke urgently. Commander, we've detected activity near the core chamber. Thermal readings suggest 2 life forms are moving through the lower levels. Vela's heart leapt. Send backup immediately. Protect the Queen at all costs. Back in the tunnels, Lyra finally reached the medical bay, a small, hidden facility designed for emergencies such as this. With trembling hands, she laid Leo gently onto a diagnostic bed and activated the automated healing unit. The machine whirred to life, scanning his injuries and administering treatments. A holographic display hovered above him, flashing red warnings and critical statuses. Heal him, she whispered, gripping the edge of the bed. Please. Minutes stretched into hours as the machine worked tirelessly, repairing damaged tissue and stabilizing his condition. Lyra refused to leave his side, her gaze locked on his face as if sheer willpower could speed the process along. Eventually, the alarm subsided, replaced by a steady green light indicating stability. Relief washed over her like a tidal wave, and she collapsed onto the floor beside the bed, tears streaming freely now. For the first time since the invasion began, she allowed herself to breathe. A soft groan pulled her attention back to Leo. His eyelids fluttered open, revealing dazed but conscious eyes. Hey! He croaked, his voice hoarse. Miss me? Lyra laughed, a sound tinged with exhaustion and relief. More than you know. He reached for her hand, his grip weak but steady. Guess I'm stuck with you now, huh? She smiled, squeezing his hand tightly. Yes, and don't think I've forgotten about that promise. Despite his weakened state, Leo managed to grin. Wouldn't dream of it. Hours later, reinforcements arrived, led by Commander Vela herself. The sight of armed soldiers pouring into the medical bay brought both comfort and urgency. Vela knelt beside Lyra, her expression grave. My queen, the Krylos are closing in. We need to evacuate immediately. Lyra nodded, rising to her feet. Prepare the transport ships. Evacuate as many citizens as possible. I'll handle the core. No, Leo interjected, struggling to sit up despite his injuries. We'll handle it together. Vela glanced between them, clearly skeptical. With respect, sir, you're in no condition. He's right, Lyra interrupted firmly. Leo stays with me. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Vela hesitated but ultimately bowed her head in acquiescence. As you wish, my queen. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the devastated city, Lyra and Leo stood once more before the glowing core. The Krylos fleet loomed overhead, their shadowy vessels blotting out the sun. Time was running out. The failsafe is ready, Lyra said quietly, her hand hovering over the activation panel. Once triggered, it will destabilize the core, rendering it useless to them. But it will also collapse the surrounding area. And us with it, Leo added matter-of-factly. She turned to him, her violet eyes filled with determination. Then we make sure they pay for what they've done. Together, they devised a final plan, one that combined Lyra's knowledge of the planet's defenses with Leo's resourcefulness. Using the core's residual energy, they rigged a series of explosive charges designed to create a chain reaction, destroying the Krylos fleet while buying enough time for the evacuation to complete. This isn't goodbye, Leo said as they prepared to activate the sequence. Not really. Lyra shook her head, her expression fierce yet tender. No, it's just the beginning. With a shared glance, they pressed their palms to the activation panel simultaneously. The core pulsed brightly, its energy surging outward in waves. Alarms blared as the countdown began, echoing through the chamber like a heartbeat. Hand in hand, they braced themselves for what came next, ready to face whatever fate awaited them, united as one. The core's energy surged outward in a blinding burst of light, engulfing the chamber and rippling through the atmosphere like a shockwave. The Krylos fleet, caught off guard by the sudden explosion, was consumed in an instant, its dark ships disintegrating into nothingness as the chain reaction spread across the sky. For a moment, it seemed as though the entire planet held its breath. When the light faded, silence reigned. The oppressive shadow of the invaders had lifted, leaving behind only the soft hum of the planet's natural energy. Lyra and Leo stood amidst the aftermath, their hands still clasped tightly together, their bodies trembling with exhaustion but alive. We did it, Lyra whispered, her voice filled with awe. Leo let out a shaky laugh, leaning against her for support. Yeah, we did. Commander Vela appeared moments later, leading a team of soldiers who had been monitoring the situation from a safe distance. Her expression shifted from concern to relief when she saw them standing there, battered but victorious. "My queen!" she exclaimed, rushing forward. "You're safe." Lyra nodded, releasing Leo's hand momentarily to embrace her loyal advisor. "Thanks to him," she said, gesturing toward Leo with pride. "And to everyone who fought alongside us today." Vela glanced at Leo, her sharp gaze softening slightly. "It seems you've earned your place among us, human." Leo grinned weakly. "Guess I have." In the days that followed, the planet began to heal. The scars left by the invasion were deep, but the resilience of its people shone brighter than ever. Reconstruction efforts unfolded rapidly, fueled by a renewed sense of unity and hope. Stories of Lyra and Leo's bravery spread quickly, becoming legend among the populace. They were hailed as heroes not just for saving the core, but for proving that strength lay not in individual power, but in partnership. For Leo, adjusting to life on Lyra's planet wasn't easy at first. The advanced technology, alien customs, and constant attention from curious citizens took some getting used to. But Lyra remained by his side every step of the way, patiently guiding him while learning more about Earth's culture herself. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, built on mutual respect, trust, and a shared sense of humor that often left those around them shaking their heads in amusement. One evening, several months after the battle, they found themselves back at the shimmering lake where their journey had begun. The triple moons hung low in the sky, casting silvery reflections across the water. It was here that Lyra decided to address the promise that had brought them full circle. "Do you remember what you said all those years ago?" she asked, her tone playful yet serious. Leo chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his neck. "Which part? The when I grow up bit or the whole marriage thing?" "The latter," she replied, raising an eyebrow. "Though I suppose technically you have grown up since then." He laughed, glancing at her sidelong. "Fair point. So, what are you saying? You want to hold me to that promise?" She stepped closer, her violet eyes locking onto his with unwavering intensity. "I'm saying yes, if you'll have me." For once, Leo didn't hesitate. He reached for her hand, his smile warm and genuine. Always. Their wedding ceremony was unlike anything Leo could have imagined. A dazzling display of lights, music, and traditions that blended elements from both their worlds. Bioluminescent flowers lined the path to the altar, which was constructed from translucent crystal that pulsed gently with energy. As Lyra walked toward him, dressed in robes that shimmered like stardust, Leo felt his heart swell with emotion. This wasn't just a union between two people. It was a merging of cultures, a testament to the idea that love transcended boundaries. When the officiant pronounced them bonded for life, the crowd erupted into cheers, accompanied by bursts of colorful fireworks that lit up the night sky. Even the stars seemed to shine brighter that evening, as if celebrating alongside them. Years passed and their family grew. To everyone's delight, including Leo's, they welcomed not one, not two, but 3 children into the world. Each child bore traits of both parents. Silver-streaked hair reminiscent of Lyra's luminous tresses, combined with Leo's mischievous grin and adventurous spirit. Raising them proved to be a whirlwind of challenges and joys, but together, Leo and Lyra navigated parenthood with patience and laughter. Their eldest, a spirited girl named Isla, inherited her mother's leadership skills and her father's knack for storytelling. She often entertained her siblings, and anyone else within earshot, with elaborate tales of intergalactic adventures. The middle child, Kale, was quieter but fiercely intelligent, showing an early aptitude for engineering and tinkering with gadgets. And their youngest, Mira, had a boundless curiosity that mirrored her father's wanderlust, always asking questions about the universe beyond their planet. Life wasn't without its trials, of course. There were moments of doubt, disagreements, and sleepless nights. But through it all, Leo and Lyra faced everything as a team, their connection growing deeper with each challenge they overcame. On quiet evenings, they would sit together on the balcony of their home, watching the moons rise over the horizon while their children played below. Lyra rested her head on Leo's shoulder, contentment radiating from her presence. "You know," she mused softly, "I never thought I'd find happiness like this." Leo smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "Me neither. But I'm glad I crashed my ship into your tower all those years ago." She laughed, nudging him playfully. "That makes one of us." As they gazed out at the stars twinkling above, they knew their story was far from over. Together, they had faced war, loss, and uncertainty, emerging stronger with each trial. And now, surrounded by their family and the vibrant world they called home, they embraced the peace they had fought so hard to achieve. Their lives became a tapestry woven with love, laughter, and countless memories. They had started as strangers from different worlds, brought together by fate, or perhaps by something even greater. Whatever the force that guided them, one truth remained undeniable. They had found their forever in each other.